Hello everybody, my name is Matt Bressington. I am of course one of the most outstanding minds in all of European American football. I've had many correct opinions, obviously, and some incorrect opinions as well. Dragons fans would be sure to point that one out, and Panthers fans as well, and a couple of other fan bases. But today I wanted to look into week 3 of the ELF season and just give my predictions and what I think is going to happen in each of the respected games. Just quickly before we start, I don't think I'm going to be able to do any more stat videos, which is super annoying because the ELF have updated their website and it's horrendous and horrible and doesn't work and it's super complicated to navigate and you can't look at individual week stats. So sadly, this seems to be the retirement of stat videos, at least for the time being until maybe they sort it out. I'm not sure if they plan on sorting it out. They're now using a different sports metrics. I'm not sure if they paid money for that and they're just going to continue using that even though it's unusable. So currently, I cannot make a stat video. I have tried really hard. There's no way to look at like anything all time or anything on a week by week basis or anything that's really important. So just a disclaimer and an update on the channel is that stat videos, sadly, seem to have died. Back onto a more cheery note, we have the first game, which is the Leipzig Kings versus the Enthroners, the Hungarian team. I can't pronounce the name and I don't want to butcher it, but the Kings versus the Enthroners. This is probably, it's actually quite an interesting matchup because it's two of the worst teams in the league. However, McShane last week, in week 2, absolutely went off like 170 yards, and he is currently the leading rusher of the ELF. So I think the Kings have really narrowed it down to he is their offensive identity, and Allen is also a dual threat QB, so I think just rushing, just fully committing to that is going to be pretty good for them going into the future in terms of picking up a couple of wins this year. The Enthroners are a problem. They're not good. They are not good. Their offensive line has done nothing. Their QB has only thrown 1 touchdown, I believe, so far in the first 2 weeks. They're really struggling to just get any kind of identity. Their defense hasn't been pretty good at all. They're like their linebacker trio that I mentioned at the start of the year has had some success, but you know, you can have a decent linebacker trio and then everything else be bad and it makes the team look worse. So I don't think that this one's going to be particularly close. I think the Kings are going to run all over the Enthroners and they will pick up their first win. Because they did score in the Panthers, they only scored once, but McShane was a standout. And I think they're just going to lean even more into him, just giving him the rock over and over again. And I don't think there's anyone on that defense that can really stop them. As for the Enthroners offense, again, lack of identity. QB hasn't got any time to throw the ball. So I think this one is a fairly obvious Kings win. And as for prediction, I think I'm going to go for like a over-under. I'm going to go for under 40 points. And I think it will be like a 21 or 24 to like 6. I can't see the Enthroners really doing too much. And I can see the Kings kind of amping up, like getting a little bit more progress during the season. We have the Hamburg Sea Devils and the Cologne Centurions as one of the games as well this week, which is another interesting matchup. I think, given the parameters of that division, with Cologne being 1-1 and surprising quite a lot of people, including myself, their defense has been super solid. Their offense has been okay, good enough. Like Lienhardt is a standout, a decent young receiver. And then Hamburg 0-2, but kind of unfortunate to be 0-2. They're going against a hot Panthers team, but then again, they were massive favourites in that one, and then lost to a very strong Rhine Fire team. But President Hare's been okay. I wouldn't say he's blowing anyone away. Running game, I would like to see a bit more Hardin Canido. He's a young guy who can really create spark, but I don't think there's anyone that can deal with Blair. He's on a crazy run of form, and I don't think there's really anyone that can cope with him. So as predictions, I think I'm going to go with a Hamburg win, but they're going to make it dirty. Cologne are going to make it dirty. That seems to be their defensive identity. They make it tough. We've seen how hard it is to break them down, and I think with that team, I think maybe Cologne is going to get below 30 points, maybe like a 24, and I think Hamburg outdo them, but not by much. I think maybe it'll be a low scoring one. I think with both teams getting under 30. And overall, I think below 45 as a pair. I'm going to go for that. Like a 23, 21 maybe. Yeah, I'm going to go for that. Bit of a rough prediction there, but we got there eventually. Prague versus the Vikings next. Vikings went off to a really good start against the Thunder, and then they really, really slowed down the second half. Me and Parker, my good friend and co-host on The Reach, plug there, we were commentating over that game for alternative commentary, and we were extremely worried about that fourth quarter for the Vikings. They just slowed down. They started throwing picks towards the end of the first half, and then during the crunch time of the second half, they threw an interception there as well, and they seemed to get very comfortable. Nasi Pajarin is one of my favorite running backs. Just overall, I think he's great, and he got 84 yards in his debut and a touchdown. So I think he'll be a big problem for Prague. Prague do have an extremely good defense, as Parker mentioned. They've only given up 41 points. I believe only 2 touchdowns because of special teams mishaps. But Prague have no running backs. Prague have got about 4 running backs down. Shaz, who's a friend of mine, has not been performing excellently. I think he's about 30% accuracy. The offense isn't moving the way that I expected it to move. I didn't have them coming as a top team, but I thought they would be better. I thought that they would be spreading the ball out a little bit more. They do have a pretty decent receiver core. Like, Nicole is a good receiver. They got Eden at tight end, who I predicted would be super important, and we just haven't seen him. I really thought he would be because they're not a necessarily great team. I thought that he, as a freak athlete, would get a load of touches and be a serious problem. We haven't seen any of him, so I'm kind of hoping they come out a little bit better, but I can only see this going one way, and I think it's a Vikings win. I think that it'd be maybe a low scoring win, but a comfortable win, like a 26-6 or a 30-6. They do have Isaac now on the Prague secondary, but just too many weapons. And Jordan Bua last week showed he's still an elite receiver. He had a few drops, but managed to get a number of good yards. Xavier Edwards, one of the standouts of the week at corner, and I just think they have too much, and I think that Prague are going to fall to 0-3. Now, this next one is my game of the week. It might not be like the actual game of the week in terms of what the league might say, but this is definitely my personal game of the week. We got Dragons versus Raiders. This is going to be such a fun game. Dragons have my favorite offense in the whole league. They're so creative. Connor Miller's on fire. 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, not one sack throughout the year. Running game's on fire as well. And then the Raiders also put up crazy numbers. Jarvis McClam's on an MVP streak. Marco Schneider's still a brilliant complementary receiver. Philip Harms had an amazing year. Bonetti's done decent at running back. Sandro may be back. We don't really know what's going on with him. He is still injured. But this is going to be such a fun game. I will be absolutely watching this one in depth. I'm so excited. Defensively, they both have some problems. You know, they gave up a lot of points to the Ravens earlier, and they did lock it down a lot more against the guards. But again, the guards don't really have much going for them in terms of their offensive identity other than Silas. But the Dragons as well had some issues with Milan in the deep balls, and I am so excited to see this game. I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be high scoring. I think it's going to be back and forth. We're going to have lead changes after lead changes. We're going to have Connor Miller just putting on something. I hope that he continues his production, because I do think he's a really good and talented QB. And it's just going to be bombs. I think it's going to be an 80-point game. Honestly, it could be. Very easy, an 80-point game. We've seen the Raiders' offensive ability to score. We've seen the Dragons' offensive ability to score. They put up 41 in Milan, and the Raiders do have a better defense than Milan, but why not? I'm on the Dragons train. I explained that in the Reach, and I've done a full 180. I was not a massive fan going into the Dragons of this season, but I'm on the train. I'm so excited. This is my Matt Bressington peak analyst game of the week. Now, week 3 just continues to spoil us. We got the Panthers versus the Thunder, another fun matchup just due to offenses. Tony Tate, as Parker hypothesized, is on an MVP run. He's been phenomenal. Matty Ice has proven everyone, including myself, wrong in just lighting up teams. The offensive line's been solid. Weiss, I believe, or Weiss, W-I-S, the Panthers, apologize for the pronunciation, but he's been on fire. They're just good. You know, they shut out the Kings pretty well. They only got 6 points. They had some problems with the Hamburg Sea Devils on defense, but, you know, they are a good offensive team in Hamburg, so, I'm not too fussed about that. And then Berlin have been, in my opinion, a little bit disappointing. I really thought they would be burning teams with that offensive trio in Vilcek and Zimmerman and Aaron Jackson and then Donovan Ison throwing the rock, but they have not been. They've had under 100 yards passing in the first game. Until the fourth quarter, I think until the third quarter, they had 62 yards passing, and then Donovan Ison's taking some damage. He's getting hit a lot. The offensive line isn't good. They're running a lot of running plays with him, which is fine. It's working to some extent. But then they're getting a backup in to throw the ball. And I'm not a fan of it, personally. I think that Ison needs to be a little bit more accurate and just throwing the rock. He's obviously attacking the QB. We saw that at the Berlin Rebels. So he is more than enough. But, it's just not clicking. I don't really get why. He has the talent. The defense has proven to be solid. They got Carl Kitchens in there. They got Ludwig Myron in there. They got Cypher in there. They got Spillum in there, who got a pick that changed the tempo of the game last week. So they have the pieces. It's just the passing game. And if you told me that coming in week 1, I would have told you were crazy. If the Thunder passing game ain't working, I'd say, nah, you're wrong. There's no way that's going to happen. But here we are in week 3, and they've got maybe 200 yards passing, maybe 250. But Panthers, I think, are going to come out on this one. Again, another team I've had to do a 180 on. I think the Panthers are going to win this one. Matty Ice, Tony Tate, that connection, I'm loving it. I think it's going to be a similar one to the Vikings, where the Panthers take a little bit of a lead and the Berlin kind of work into a little bit more. They seem to be a bit more of a second half team. But I think I'm picking the Panthers. Panthers to win. I'm on the train on that one, and the Dragons. Both, I've done a full thing on both fan bases, but I think the Panthers are going to win about 25-10. That's what I'm going to go for. The kicking game of Berlin seems solid. One of the only teams that is. So I think that 25, maybe 23-10. Milan versus Surge this week as well. Another really fun matchup. Surge are going to be trying to build on their win against Paris. Milan are going to be trying to bounce back on their loss against the Dragons. Milan did have some bright sparks, deep threats. They have Flores, who is one of my favorite young receivers in the league. He's under 20 or he's 21. He's very good. I didn't know they would be targeting him as much. I predicted they're just going to go Sean Constant every play. And they did do that a lot. But we saw the tight end screen, the funnel screens. They look pretty offensively created. Dodd is a great offensive coordinator. And they looked solid. They just didn't have enough going forward. And I think with the lack of defense was one of my concerns going into the year, because they spent all of their EU spots on tight end and offensive line, and then one at the running back position in Ali Khalifa. Nothing on defense. Conceded 41 points, but granted, it's a really good Dragons team. But also, Surge have a really good offense too, and we saw that with Lewis Guy getting a hat-trick of touchdowns in his return. And then they got Hennessy, who's proven to be really good. They got Robo, who was on fire last week and got a very long run and touchdown. And I can't see Milan coming out for this one. I think, again, it'll be pretty close. Moritz was also on the Surge. We didn't really see too much of him. We saw flashes, but, he's still a player that we're still kind of waiting to see that step he takes. So I think the Surge have too much offensively for the Milan to handle. I think the Milan have enough to score on Surge, and I think they will score a couple of times. I think more than 3. I think it'll be about 24 to 30 something. I'm going to say 35. I'll pull a number out of there. So I think that Surge gets one fairly comfortable, but Milan have a bit more to build off of. Luke is probably one of the best QBs in the league. He has a great arm. He's mobile. He's big and he's strong. So I think that he'll be fine. But just that Surge offense is too much for Milan to handle. That is my prediction for that game. The penultimate game of the weekend, Musketeers versus Fire. This is a very important matchup in terms of that divisional standings. Musketeers are obviously 1-1, trying to make a bit of a run for it. That second spot, as one of the comments said in our video on the Reach episode 2, is that second seed spot in that division. It's so up for the taking with those teams, and I massively agree. And I think that Paris feel like they need that, because they do. They've got such a talented team that Parker thinks they've underperformed. And in some ways, I agreed. I think they have. Their offensive line isn't very good. Their offensive play calling has been lackluster and not very creative, and it kind of lacks that spark. But they do have Edwards, and they do have Sweet, so they easily could start turning that around, get a little bit more momentum. On the reverse, Ryan Fire have got the best team in the league. I don't think that's particularly close. They got Amari Williams, who I think is going to be shut down on that team. They've got Alessandro Fernandez. They've got other players just dotted around everywhere, Mahonwu, and they've got Robitaille, and they've got a really, really amazing offensive line. They've got a pretty solid run game, and I don't think that Paris can deal with it. I think that they'll put up a bit of a fight, but I don't think it'll be close. I think I know that's maybe a bit of a hot take, one for the reach, but I think that Fire put a bit of a beating on him. I think that there are levels to this, and I think that the level is Ryan Fire, and then everyone else, and then maybe Paris in top 7, maybe top 5. But yeah, it's gonna be. I'm trying to think. Hamburg, are they better than the Musketeers? Maybe. I think that'd be a close game, and I think that they were pretty comfortably beating the Hamburg Sea Devils until they kind of coasted towards the end, and then maybe have a bit of a comeback. But I don't think they'll have a problem. I'm gonna go for a 36 to 14. Yeah, 36-14, 36-17. That's my final prediction for the penultimate game of the weekend. And to finish off this amazing week of European League of Football action, we have the Ravens and the Guards, two obviously new teams founded this year. Ravens I really like. As everyone who follows my Twitter knows, my mother has become a big fan of them. And Markel Castle and Tomowa and Chad Jeffries has been brilliant too. They're a really fun team. I really like them. Their defense lacks a little bit, but we'll see how they rebound. Obviously, they are coming off a bye week. The Guards, I have said, lack an offensive identity outside of Silas Nasita. He's their only weapon at the moment. Colin Hill's been targeting him a lot. Jahali, I'm still waiting for him to really come out because he obviously has that potential. He was great at the Kings last season, one of the Rookie of the Year picks. I just don't really know what's going on with them. They had a defense. They were solid against the Dragons, but couldn't really stop their passing game. And then they just didn't really do anything against the Raiders. There was never really a moment where you thought, oh, they might actually kind of do something here. I don't really feel that watching that game. So I think the Ravens win this one. I think that it's basically going to be a battle of Silas and Tomiwa plus Castle on just who can get the most yards. And I think it will be a bit of a high-scoring one because both defenses lack. I think maybe a 35 to 41 or 42. I think that'll be a really fun game. I'm hoping the Ravens is just that team that just are fun. Because I think, that's helpful. Teams with great offenses and bad defenses sometimes are the best. We've seen the reverse in kind of the Cologne team. They have a really solid offense, and a really solid defense, but their offense is fine. But this should be a really fun matchup. This could be a bit of an underrated matchup, and it'll finish off the week. And we'll revisit this one, see how I do, and I'll try and keep a tally of my my correct or incorrect predictions and how those edge out. So that'll do us with those today. I really hope you kind of liked this bit more relaxed feel, just a bit of a quicker video I can get midweek where I don't have to do so much editing. And I wanted to also tell people about the stats just being sadly dead. I hated that. I really loved making those videos, and it looks like that might sadly come to an end unless the league does something about it and updates the website, which I'm really hoping for. I'm pushing them on social media to do it, and I'm really hoping that they can sort it out. I do have the Ruben Gap project in production, just trying to figure out some stuff. I have some crazy stats in that one, so you'll see a return of the graphs and stats and the numbers and the probability rates and stuff like that coming into the Ruben Gap video. But I just wanted to do a bit more relaxed kind of show feel for this and get my thoughts and feelings out on the league. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for tuning in today for this one. I will see you at the end of that week. If I do not upload before then, which I probably will, but in this particular series, I'll see you beginning of week 4. Thank you, and goodbye.